few classes about Shavuot. בכל זאת זה החג הקרב ובא. We have other חגים too, יום העצמאות בעזרת השם, and יום ירושלים, but after that we have חג שבועות. And we'll try to see when exactly it became Chag Matan Torah. So let's see. Let's start from the beginning, and we will see how it goes. So first and foremost, we have twice in the Torah that we have the idea of counting. So one is in Vayikra Perek of Gimel. דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם, so you speak to the children of Israel, ואמרת עליהם, and you shall tell them, כי תבואו אל הארץ, when you will arrive to the land, or when you will enter the land, אשר אני נותן לכם, that I'm giving you, קצרתם את קצירה, and you shall cut its harvest, והבאתם את עומר ראשית קצירכם אל הכהן. And you should bring the first harvest to the Kohen. והניף את העומר לפני השם לרצונכם ממחרת השבת, יניפנו הכהן. So the Kohen is going to lift it up, and he's going to do it from when? ממחרת השבת. So we all know, ממחרת השבת does not mean on a Sunday. That's what the Tzdukim really wanted to think. But ממחרת השבת is the day after Pesach. That's when, quote unquote, ספירת העומר begins. Just for your, I don't know, for your thoughts or for a discussion, why can't we just say ממחרת הפסח? Why to make things complicated? Okay, so it's something interesting, something very interesting. Why they call Pesach Shabbat? There is another Chag that is also called a little bit like a Shabbat, Yom Kippurim. It's called Shabbat Shabbaton. So Shabbaton is like a mini Shabbat, right? Like Ein, Ishon. There is something little, right? So basically, Ishon Bat Ein, right? So the idea is that we need to understand why Pesach is called Shabbat, but this is not for today. And then it says what? ועשיתם ביום הנבחם את העומר כבש תמים בין שנתו לעולה. So this is the sacrifice that you need to do. Let's skip to פסוק ט"ו. וספרתם לכם ממחרת השבת, and you should count for yourself from the day after Shabbat. מיום אביאכם את עומר התנופה, 7 שבתות תמימות תהיינה. So you need to count 7 weeks. עד ממחרת השבת השביעית תספרו 50 יום. So we have 7 weeks, but it's 50 days. Now, we all know 7 times 7 is 49 and not 50. And והקרבתם מנחה חדשה להשם. Okay, thank you. Okay, and the show is sponsored in the memory of Mel and Sylvia David, זיכרונם לברכה, מנחם מנדל בן אברהם מאיר וטויביה רבקה, וציוויה חיה, בת אריה לב וחווה אידו, by their children. So thank you, and should be לעילוי נשמה, בעזרת השם. So here, basically, if I look at this narrative, and I will tell you, okay, so what did they do in the time of the Bet HaMikdash? Answer is, they brought the Omer, right? And they start counting something like from day after Pesach for 7 times 7 weeks. And on the 50th day, they celebrated the Omer. Did they have Tikkun Leil Shavuot? No, they were not as religious as us, right? They didn't have Tikkun Leil Shavuot. And it doesn't say anything about Chag Matan Torah here. It's basically a celebration of what? Of the harvest and the Omer. Okay, sounds good. Now, what do you do after the Bet HaMikdash is destroyed? So what should we do? Klum. What was the nature of Shavuot during the time of the Bet HaMikdash? They brought Korban, they brought the Omer, they celebrated like Korban Chagiga like every other day. It was 1 day, but they had 7 days of Tashlumin, if you forgot or whatever it is. And you went home. There is no lulav, there is no etrog, there is no sukkah, there is no matzah, there is no maor. You bring a korban, you celebrate the omer, and then you are done. Zeo. No, that came much later. So the thing is that there's nothing. There's very much nothing. It's really a very quote unquote. Yes, but it's a very. I'm saying when you don't have Bet Mikdash, it's very empty. There is no mitzvah that everyone does without the Bet HaMikdash.
We do other things.
So what do we do here?
So maybe we do what we do now. Maybe
counting. Yeah, so counting will be Zecher LaMikdash. So count, and that's it. And on the 50th day, stop counting. Isur Melacha, we'll have, but there is no real content, right? Okay. So now take a look at Dvarim Perek Tet Zayin. Then the Torah again describes this Sphira, and it says, Shiva Shavuot Tispor Lach Me'achel Chermesh Bakama Tachel Ispor Shiva Shavuot. So when do you start? When is the time that you start counting? From the time of what? The reaping, okay, of the harvest, which is when? No specific day. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. I feel I'm doing that like every shiur, and I look at you and I'm like, oh my gosh. But there's nothing here. The time, it depends on the agriculture season, right? It might be Mimachorat Pesach, it might be 3 days after Pesach, I don't know. I'm not a farmer. So basically, it's very vague. Me'achel chermesh bakama. It almost reminds me like the first Mishnah in Brachot. ומתי קוראים את שמע בערבית? משעה שהכהנים נכנסים לאכול בתרומתם. How is that going to help me? Like today, I have no idea when exactly they are entering the Bet HaMikdash, right? So the same thing here, מאחל חרמש בקמה, and then it says, ועשית חג שבועות. Oh, חג שבועות. What is חג שבועות? A festival of the weeks, right? להשם אלוקיך, this is the name. מיסת נדבת ידך, אשר תיתן כאשר יברכך השם אלוקיך, so you bring all sorts of donations, ושמחת לפני השם אלוקיך, this is wonderful, like in every other חג, אתה ובנך וביתך, עבדך, עמתך ולוי אשר בשעריך, so everyone should celebrate with you, not only you, because that's becoming selfish, you need to basically bring joy to everyone in society, והגר והיתום והאלמנה אשר בקרבך, במקום אשר יבחר השם אלוקיך לשכן שמו שם, so this is basically what? That חובת עלייה לרגל, that you need to rejoice in front of God, so this is בית המקדש, וזכרת כי עבד היית במצרים ושמרת ועשית את החוקים האלה. So, first time that it's called חג שבועות, but there is no meaning in it, it's just the holiday that you celebrate, the weeks that you counted before. And then there is the idea that you need to rejoice, and that you need to remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and the time for that is 7 weeks after you what? You started to walk in Rachel Chermesh Bakama. After you started basically collecting and cutting the harvest. Yes.
Did they used to cut on Cholamoid?
If they used to what?
Did they used to do it on Cholamoid? The harvesting. If it's
The Omer? Sure.
Oh, they do.
Yeah. Okay. Because it's a mitzvah. That's why. Yeah. The question is a good question. Because it's a mitzvah, it's mutar. So basically, based on these two narratives, you basically ask yourself the question, even in the time of the Bet HaMikdash, Chag Shavuot was what? A celebration of the Katzir, Omer, Bikurim, whatever it is. It's all agriculture. It's all about bringing something from your field. Nothing to do with Torah, with celebration of the Chag Matan Torah. There is nothing to do with anything spiritual. It's mamash Chag Shel Tvu'ah. I'm not an expert on comparing religions, but in ancient religions, there were other holidays, very similar, that celebrated the same idea. Festival of the harvest. Okay? It's not a new thing. Kibbutzim, נכון. But there is the Jewish perspective, or the Jewish, the injection of some Judaism to it. ושמחת לפני השם אלוקיך, and you should rejoice others. It's not only about you, it's about the others and all of that. Wonderful. But it's not the Chag Shavuot that we know. Okay. So now, third, we are connecting the Sfirot. And I'm not talking about Zohar, not the spheres. I'm talking about the countings. שמות למדלת, וחג שבועות תעשה לך ביקורי קציר חיטים, וחג האסיף תקופת השנה. So you should make for yourself a holiday of what? Of the weeks. And it's also ביקורי קציר חיטים. What does it mean ביקורי קציר חיטים? The first wheat harvest, very good. V'chag ha'asif, what is Chag ha'asif? The gathering, the holiday of the gathering, le'esof, from the word le'esof. Tkufat hashana, what is Tkufat hashana? The what? The turn of the year, which is when?
There's more than one turn of the year.
חג האסיף זה סוכות. חג הקציר זה שבועות. Okay? So this is very interesting. Now we have at the end of the pasuk what? וחג האסיף, which talks about סוכות, זה תקופת השנה. ויהי לי תקופת השנה, it's towards the end of the year, which is a little strange because Sukkot is the beginning of the new year. Oh, יפה. We live in two different תקופות. You have what we call the counting of the Luach Shana, of the calendar, starts Tishrei or Nisan. It depends to where you count. Then you have the agriculture year that is divided to 4 reviot based on the rain and based on when you plant, when you harvest it, and when you gather it. Okay, for us, I guess none of us here is a farmer, unless someone is going to surprise me. I think it will be easier to find doctors and lawyers than farmers here. But they will know. They will know. They will let you know exactly when is everything being scheduled. Okay. So we have some kind of a little bit of a combination between the holiday of the weeks and the holiday of the celebration of the agriculture in Shmot. In במדבר, וביום הביקורים, בהקריבכם מנחה חדשה להשם בשבועותיכם. מקרא קודש יהיה לכם כל מלאכת עבודה לא תעשו. On the day of the ביקורים, when you bring the first fruits, so then when you bring מנחה חדשה, that was the first sauce, but מנחת העומר, בשבועותיכם, which means what? In the weeks, but it probably means חג השבועות, the holiday of the weeks, so then it will be מקרא קודש, which means what? איסור מלאכה, you cannot do any מלאכה.
Well, it's Shavuotechem, your weeks.
Mm-hmm. Which makes no sense, or the holiday of the weeks, right?
The weeks that you're counting.
Oh, in the weeks that you're counting, yeah, it's very ambiguous. And then the last one, וחג הקציר, ביקורי מעשיך, אשר תזרע בשדה, וחג האסיף בצאת השנה, והוספך את מעשיך מן השדה. So we have really 2 different חגים. We have חג הקציר, that's when you bring your first fruits, that's חג השבועות, and then there is חג האסיף, which is where? Sukkot time. Okay. Still, nothing to do with receiving the Torah. Okay. Okay. So, let's start with the most complicated pasuk that brought tremendous tension between the tzdukim and the prushim, and we'll try to understand the question that I asked: why just not to say simple, ממחרת הפסח? So, וספרתם לכם ממחרת השבת, מיום אביכם את עומר התנופה, 7 שבתות תמימות תהיינה. So you should count for yourself from the day after Shabbat, from the day that you bring the tnufa, 7 complete full weeks. Tov. Here, there is a summary that I brought you from different מחקרים, and then I want to see the Ramban. So first, it's like an introduction. לפי הצדוקים, based on the tzdukim, which were basically a group that saw themselves as what? Not how the Prushim viewed them. The tzdukim, they saw themselves from the Mishpachat Tzadok HaKohen, and they basically said, A, we are correct, tzodkim, and I will tell you that the idea, I think I shared it with I don't know how many people were there on Shabbat afternoon. Yeah. I'm not that generous. I'm not going to share again. But I will. The tzdukim and prushim were basically disgraceful names that each group called each other. We think prushim, it's like a praise. Prushim is not a praise. Prushim is muvdalim. Like people who are poresh min hatzibur. The name Prushim was given to the Prushim by the Tzdukim. When the Prushim heard how they view them, they called them Tzdukim, and not necessarily only because they came from Tzadok, but because they think they're always right, but this is not the thing. Tzedek is also separation. Think what you do as a judge. When I give justice, what do? I separate between the guilty one and the innocent one, between the mutar and the asur, between the tameh and the tahor, which means I separate things. So the Prushim called the Tzdukim, you are the ones who left, and the Tzdukim says to the Prushim, no, exactly the opposite, you are the ones who left. You know, it always reminds me the confrontation between Eliyahu and Achav. Elijah and the king of Israel, Achav. After Achav was chasing Eliyahu for 3 years and he met each other, so Achav says to him, Ata ocher Israel, you are the one who hates the Jewish people. And Eliyahu says to him, good morning, Ata ocher Israel. Right? So it's like, no, you are the terrible one. And each one of them, by the way, thought that they were correct. And the other one is the one who deviates, which is very interesting. We now, in retrospect of many, many thousands of years, we say we were right. Like the Prushim were right. But you understand that the Prushim were the ones that basically pushed for a reformization. The Tzdukim, you're all with me? Like, do you want me to elaborate on it a bit? Okay. Even if you will say no, I'm just trying to pretend that there is democracy here, but there is dictatorship here. So the thing is that really it's an interesting thing. Many people ask the question of what exactly were the points of machloket that made such a separation between the Tzdukim, the Isiim, the Baitusim, and the Prushim. If you tell me that it was only just some disputes, Shammai and Hillel had tremendous disputes, and they still continue to marry each other and to get along. What was the cause for this mamash divisiveness, separation between the Tzdukim and the Prushim? And there were many reasons that were given, and some of them are very good, some of them are a little less. But it seems to be that one of the major causes for separation between the Tzdukim and Prushim was about the authority of interpretation. It is a bit of a teaser for my class that I will give Bezrat Hashem in Hebrew. In Hebrew, for Tikkun Leil Shavuot here. I will not give you the shiur now, but I'm just going to tell you that one of the ideas is that who is responsible for giving laws that are not written in the Torah? You are so biased. What was there before the Chachamim? Kohanim. You look at Tanakh. When the Jewish people wanted to know something, what did they do? They went to the Kohen. Ela Kohanim HaLeviim. When David HaMelech goes to battle, even before he becomes a king, hu shoel ba'ephod. You bring a Kohen with a breastplate, and then the things shine. Before a king goes to a war, he goes to the Kohen, he asks the Urim Vetumim, and then you convey the message. You're not going to Chachamim. Later on, the Gemara adds a bit, and they said that you also ask the Sanhedrin. Okay? But in the time of Tanakh, it was all about the Kohanim. And therefore, Chachamim, with all due respect to them, they can maybe suggest interpretation to what is written, but what is not written, they have no authority. Prushim comes along, and part of it was the lack of satisfaction of what the Kohanim do in the Beit HaMikdash. By the way, it was not only the Prushim that were against the Kohanim, it was also Tzdukim cannot be against the Kohanim, they are the Kohanim. Isiim, part of them, they left to Midbar Yehuda because they couldn't tolerate what's going on in the Beit HaMikdash, but also יפה מאוד.
What?
Jesus.
Jesus, oh, you knew that.
His idea, first and foremost, was he was not able, like many other Jews, to tolerate what the Kohanim do in the Beit HaMikdash. They were corrupt. Everyone agreed about it, by the way. Everyone agreed that they were corrupt. Many of them even said that they don't even keep the halacha. And just in Beit HaMikdash Hasheni, there were more Kohanim than ever in Jewish history. Why? Kohanim Gdolim. Because they died every year. Okay? They bought their Kehuna Gdola, and obviously they didn't last.
So why do we glorify that period?
We don't.
The Pope, same thing, gonna buy it this time. See?
So everyone was upset with them. But the Kohanim, they were very connected. And not all the Pushim hated them. Okay? It was complicated, mamash complicated. But the thing is, the main thing is that the Tzdukim basically says to Chachamim, you have no authority, and also some of your methods basically create things that shouldn't exist, or even sometimes are illogical. I'll give you an example. I'm not going to give you the answer, but I'll give you the example. Daf Yomi is Makot. I don't do Daf Yomi, but Daf Yomi is Makot, right? Okay, you are where? You tet? Kaf. Okay. Do you remember what the Gemara says in Daf Hey, Amud Bet? It was 2 weeks ago. But you do remember today, which is good.
That's why it's called Daf Yomi.
Yeah. We should have Daf Etmol, Daf Yomi, and Daf Machar. Okay, that's a new project. Okay, so in Daf Hey, there is a very interesting Mishnah. It's a very famous Mishnah. And the halacha is like that. Harago ein neheragim, lo harago neheragim. Which means, there are two witnesses that comes along and say that Reuven killed Shimon. Okay. The Dayanim, the judges, accepted what they said, they investigated and they accepted what they said. Okay. They are executing Reuven for killing Shimon. Two witnesses comes along and says, Ma pitom? Imanu aitem, how can you testify that Reuven killed Shimon in Yerushalayim on June 5th? On June 5th, you were with us in Vegas. Okay? So there is no way that you saw it. We're not saying that Reuven didn't kill Shimon. But we just say that you cannot testify on it, and therefore you are mezomemim. What do you do to the Edim Zomemim? No, klum. Klum. Kasher zamam velo kasher. Now, second scenario. Reuven, two witnesses come and say Reuven killed Shimon. And before we execute Reuven, two other witnesses comes along and say, how can you testify that Reuven killed Shimon on June 5th in Yerushalayim? On June 5th, you were with us in Vegas. We didn't kill Reuven yet. What do we do to the Edim? Make sense? No. You don't kill, if you didn't kill Reuven yet, you kill the witnesses. If you killed Reuven based on their testimonies, you don't kill them. As they say in a very young language, makes no sense. But that's what the Prushim said. And that's what the Tzdukim told the Prushim. Prushim, tmehim anachnu aleichem. We are amazed by your methods. You basically create with your method what? Something that makes no sense. Kasher zamam velo kasher asa. So it's like a kal vachomer. If you punish them before you execute the guy, definitely punish them what? After. So there are some interesting terutzim to it. Idach zil gemor. I'm not telling you that. Look at the Gemara in Makot in Hey Amud Bet. And the Ramban on the Torah, and many other, many interesting answers to it. So that was one of the major discussions between the Tzdukim and the Prushim. Now, let's go back to our counting. ממחרת השבת. לפי הצדוקים, according to the צדוקים, מדובר, it talks about what? יום אחד בשבוע שבתוך חג המצות.
זה אחד או ראשון?
The what?
יום ראשון. No, the aleph is אחד או ראשון.
ביום ראשון. No, you're correct. ביום ראשון בשבוע שבתוך חג המצות. כלומר שביום א', on Sunday, יחול בתוך חג המצות, יתחיל הקציר, ובאותו יום יניפו את העומר. התאריך של יום הנפת העומר משתנה כמובן, בהתאם ליום בשבוע בו התחיל חג המצות. זו עמדתם של הקראים בימי הביניים. Basically, the Karaites, the צדוקים, they basically say, ספירת העומר can change from one year to another. Why? Because sometimes Pesach, it always needs to be after the Shabbat. Oh, so if, I'll ask you, trivia question. When will be the time that the tzdukim and the pushim will count on the same day? Pesach is Shabbat, נכון מאוד. And then everyone will start counting when on יום ראשון. Very good, מצוין. אנשי כיתות מדבר יהודה סברו שהספירה מתחילה ביום א' שאחר חג המצות. So the groups of כת יהודה, מדבר יהודה, what they found in Qumran, yeah, what do you call them? Dead Sea Scrolls. So they said, no, it's always start on the Sunday after Pesach. But you need to remember that their luach, that their calendar was 364 days, שגם ימי השבוע שלו היו תאריכים קבועים. אוקיי. חג השבועות שלהם אם כן חל לעולם ביום א', ט"ו בסיוון. גם השומרונים סוברים שהספירה מתחילה מיום א' שלאחר חג המצות, אולם מכיוון שהלוח שלהם ירחי, אין לחג השבועות תאריך קבוע, והוא נע בפריסה אפשרית של 7 ימי תאריך. אוקיי. So, the Karaim has a different day. The Dead Sea Scrolls group has their day. The Tzdukim have their day. The Prushim have their own day. ולבסוף ברור שגם הנוצרים הראשונים, the early Christians, that were Jews basically, נהגו כפי הכיתות שכן חג השבועות הנוצרי, that the Christian חג שבועות, חל לעולם ביום א', 50 days after Pascha. Their Pascha, whatever it's called. Okay. So everyone agree that the Prushim are mistaken. Only the Prushim were convinced that they are correct. So how can we understand it? Okay. Take a look at the Ramban. The Ramban says the following. ממחרת השבת יניפנו הכהן, ממחרת יום טוב הראשון של פסח, from the day immediately after Pesach, after like the first day of Pesach, שאם אתה אומר שבת בראשית, because if you say just a regular שבת, אי אתה יודע איזהו לשון רש"י. That's what Rashi, he quotes Rashi. Basically says you need to say that it's the day after Pesach, meaning the day after the first day of Pesach and not after Shabbat, because Shabbat can move. Not Shabbat can move, but which Shabbat you're talking about, it will not be able to set a calendar. ובאמת, שזו גדולה שבראיות שבגמרא. It says, truly, this is probably one of the greatest ראיות, greatest proofs in the גמרא. כי מה טעם שיאמר הכתוב, כי תבואו אל הארץ וקצרתם את קצירה, תביאו העומר ממחרת שבת בראשית. כי יש במשמע, I will translate in a minute, שבאיזה זמן מן השנה שנבוא לארץ, נקצור קצירה, יניף הכהן העומר ממחרת השבת הראשונה שתהיה אחרי ביאתנו לארץ, והנה אין לחג שבועות זמן שימנה ממנו. Basically he says, if it was just a Shabbat, so basically it should be what? The first Shabbat after we enter the land, and we conquer the land, and we made Katsir, that should be what? The time to have Sfirat HaOmer, but that's have nothing to do with Chag Shavuot. He basically says, if you look, where it says, the first one. ודבר על בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם, כי תבואו אל הארץ אשר אני נותן לכם, וקצרתם את קצירה, ועבדתם את עומר ראשית קצירכם אל הכהן. If I will tell you only this pasuk, what would you say? When you enter the land, it's once, and it's the Shabbat, the first Shabbat after you conquer the land, right? And you are able to harvest. So if we make a calculation, when did the Jews enter the land? Yud ben Nisan, on the 10th of Nisan. They went through the Jordan River, right? You remember? Okay, Yofi. And then it took them how many years to conquer the land? 7. And how much to divide it? Another 7, so 14 years. So 14 years after Yud ben Nisan, they were able to what? To conquer the land. How much time it took them to start planting the land and harvesting? I don't know. It might be on the same day. It might be the day after. It might be that Shevet, I don't know, Menashe already start harvesting, and Yehuda started 3 years later, because each one of them conquered the land in a different time. So it's a balagan. So obviously I can't just say Shabbat Bereshit. So, says the Ramban, ועוד, על דרך הזה לא נדע בשנים הבאות, אחר כן מתי נוכל לספור. רק מיום החל חרמש בקמה כפי רצוננו. ואלה דברי תוהו. Which means, the Ramban says, the tzdukim, the baitusim, what do you think? God will give you a chag that it's going to change what? Every time? And there is no starting point? By the way, who said it? The Muslims has it. Their Ramadan changes every time. Vavahu.
Why?
Because it changes. They don't have, because their calendar, it's a lunar calendar, and therefore it's based on the sun, and it will change every time, on the moon, sorry, and then it will change every time.
But that's why also Easter also changed.
Nachon. But their Christian holiday of the Katsir is 50 days after
It's still
Pesach.
within the same
Yeah,
tkufa, but
the same tkufa, but not the same day. Exactly. So the Ramban says, look, we understand, we know our Torah, and everything is set. But still, even according to the Ramban, we will need to understand why it says Mimachorat HaShabbat, A, and B, this is the only Chag in the Torah that does not have a date.
50 days.
It's 50 days after the starting point, whichever the starting point is, which is very interesting. Rosh Hashanah, we have a date. Yom Kippur, we have a date. Sukkot, we have a date. Shmini Atzeret, we have a date. Pesach, we have a date. Shvi Shel Pesach, we have a date. Tu B'Shvat, we don't have a date in the Torah, okay?
Wait, don't they say that we do it on the wrong day?
What?
Shavuot.
We'll get there. Rega.
We celebrate it on the wrong day.
Yes, man. אבל, אם יהיה ממחרת השבת יום טוב, כפי קבלת רבותינו, but if we would accept what our rabbis taught us, that what? That ממחרת השבת means what? From the day after the first day of Pesach, יבוא העניין כהוגן, it's underlined, יבוא העניין כהוגן, you will understand it correctly. כי ציווה כתוב תחילה, because the Torah commanded us first, what? שנעשה בחודש הראשון חג המצות 7 ימים. That we will perform, or will keep חג הפסח, חג המצות, 7 days on the first month, which is Nisan. וביום הראשון שבתון, the first day is called שבתון, which means what? You are not allowed to do any מלאכה, and it's a יום טוב. וביום השביעי שבתון, וכל מלאכת עבודה לא נעשה. ואחרי כן אמר, כי כאשר נבוא אל הארץ, נביא ממחרת השבת הזאת הנזכרת. What is השבת הזאת הנזכרת? The שבתון that I mentioned before. The first Shabbat. What is the first Shabbat? The first day of Yom Tov of Pesach, which is called what? שבתון. הנזכרת עומר התנופה, והיא השבת הראשונה הנזכרת כאן. It's very creative, not that convincing, but very creative. What?
I couldn't think of a date. That's really interesting.
Do you know anywhere in the Torah that it says something simple?
No, but they do give, they give dates.
I gave a class once about the difference between Chag HaMatzot and Chag HaPesach.
They give dates for the other chagim. That's simple. Why don't they give a date?
We will get there. The what? Yeah, I hope so. ולימד שלא ינהג העומר במדבר ובחוץ על הארץ, אבל ממחרת השבת השביעית ו7 שבתות, לא ייתכן לפרש אותם יום טוב, אבל תרגם באונקלוס לשון שבוע, ואם כן, יהיו שתי לשונות בפסוק אחד. Okay, I'm skipping a bit. רגע. I just want to see that I'm not confusing you too much. Okay. I'm skipping to ויהיה טעם, 4 lines from the end. ויהיה טעם, the sentence starts with the word שבוע. אוקיי, ויהיה טעם ממחרת השבת לומר, כי ביום הנפת העומר יתחיל לעשות השבוע במניינו. Meaning the day that you bring the Omer, this is the starting point for for the count. And when do we bring the Omer? First day after Yom Tov, after the first day of Yom Tov of Pesach. אם כן יהיה היום ההוא ממחרת השבוע שעבר, כאילו אמר יהיה יום התנופה ממחרת שבוע לימים העוברים, וראשון לשבועות, שיספור עד שישלים 7 שבתות. ועבור שהזכירו ב15 יום, אמר שיניף את העומר ממחרת השבוע הנזכר, ויספור ממנו 7 שבתות. I will not even translate it to you. And why? Because even the Ramban, I think, will understand, will realize that what he said does not clarify the matter so much. It makes things a little confusing and complicated. He himself does not have a perfect answer, but he says that in a way, you must say that what our rabbis taught us is true. Why? Because this is the only way to have a set day. And not that Shavuot will what? Will fluctuate from one year to another. Okay. Now, Rav Dr. Chaim Burgansky, he's one of the teachers in Bar Ilan. He wrote something about it, which was very interesting, and one of the things that I took from there is the following. חז"ל העדיפו את הפרשנות הבעייתית, page 3. חז"ל העדיפו את הפרשנות הבעייתית למילה שבת, על פני מצב בו לעומר ולחג השבועות, אין קשר לתהליכי קידוש החודש וקביעת הזמן, דבר שבא בניגוד למבנה הפרק בתורה, ובניגוד להשקפתם בדבר מקור קדושת הזמן. הכיתות האחרות, לעומת זאת, כפרו בתפיסה של חכמים, שבני ישראל מקדשים את הזמן. לדעתם, קדושת המועדים דומה לקדושת השבת, וכמוה היא תלויה בקדוש ברוך הוא בלבד, לכם אין להם בעיה בכך שהעומר וחג השבועות קשורים ליום השבת, ולא למערכת התאריכים. Okay, so he suggests a very interesting, innovative reason, and that's why I brought it here. And I'm going to translate. If I say that the Torah says mimachorat haShabbat, the day after Shabbat. Now we have options, right? Mimachorat haShabbat, whatever Shabbat, the week, Shabbat meaning the week that you finish the ktsira, the harvesting, that's when you start counting. Number one. Second is the Shabbat of Pesach, Shabbat Chol HaMoed. So the first Sunday after Shabbat Chol HaMoed, that's the time. Okay, so it will change every year. Then it might be Shabbat of what? The first Shabbat after conquering the land of Israel and all of it. Okay, and then, so all those options make sense, right? Besides one, the Purushim. The Purushim comes along and say what? Mimachorat HaShabbat means what? Not Shabbat, but rather Yom Tov, the first day of Pesach. And according to the Ramban, because Yom Tov Rishon Shel Pesach called what? Shabbaton. That's called also Yom Kippur called Shabbaton. So maybe we should do it after Yom Kippur. No, it's Dafka after Pesach because it's called Shabbaton. Okay.
What happens in a year like this? There wasn't a Shabbat. It's simple.
זה יהיה מצוין. היה שבת של פסח, זה שם, גם הצדוקים יסכימו. That will be a perfect storm. So why to do that? So there is, and that's why I gave you a little bit the introduction about the tzdukim and the purushim. The purushim believed in what we said today, and what we said yesterday, and what we say every Chag. Mekadesh Israel והזמנים. When it comes to Shabbat, we say Mekadesh HaShabbat. Baruch Ata Hashem Mekadesh HaShabbat. Yom Tov, we say Mekadesh Israel והזמנים, not Mekadesh HaZmanim. Why? Because according to our Chazal, Hashem gave us what? The power to sanctify the time. It's based on us, to the extent the Midrash says that before Rosh Hashanah, the Malachim says to Hashem, when is Rosh Hashanah? And Hashem says to them, we will go down, we will ask the Beit Adin, and whatever the Beit Din says, that's what we do. We also know that among the rabbis themselves, there was tremendous metach, tension, how to set up the calendar. How do we know that? Come on, you know the story, very famous. Yeah, famous, Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Yehoshua. Rabban Gamliel was the head of the Sanhedrin. Does not mean that he was the most scholarly rabbi among the generation. Rabbi Yehoshua was even better than him. But he was the head, and he told Rabbi Yehoshua, תבוא במקלך ובתרמילך ביום הכיפורים שחל בחשבונך. Bring your wallet, bring your staff, drive your car, on Yom Kippur that is on your account, and you come to me. And he did it. He went to Rabbi Akiva, and everyone tried to, to agitate him or to comfort him. I don't know, it depends how you read it. And then he came to Rabban Gamliel, and Rabban Gamliel stood up, gave him a big kiss, and he says, Shalom alecha Rabbi u'talmidi. Okay? Rabbi, שאתה גדול ממני בחוכמה, ותלמידי שקיבלת את דבריי. Like you act like a student to me, even though you can be my rabbi. Okay. So we definitely know that even the rabbis themselves had disputes regarding how to set the calendar. But it was a common denominator between all of them that we are the one to set the calendar. So when they saw Mimachorat HaShabbat, they realized that what? If I'm talking now about a Chag, not Shabbat, so it belongs to whom? To me, to us, to the rabbis. And therefore we're going to what? To give an interpretation that it might be more far-fetched than the tzdukim and the baitusim and the karaim and all of them, in order to what? To show that it is in our hands. The tzdukim, baitusim, and all the rest of them, they didn't think that there is a distinction between Yom Tov and Shabbat. They thought that what? That they are all together with Shabbat. And it depends only on Hashem. And therefore, Shavuot is related to what? To Shabbat. And whatever Shabbat, based on their interpretation, that's when you what? You start counting the Omer. This is very innovative. This is very creative. I would say that it's debatable. We know, for example, in Parashat Emor, there is something very interesting. In Parashat Emor, when they list the list of Chagim, how do they start? Shabbat. How can you start with Shabbat and then you bring all the Chagim? So, it depends. If you are a tzduki or a baitusi, what do you say? You see? It's all under Shabbat. If you are a prushi, what do? Shabbat also has a component of a moed. Why don't you jump on me? Ask the question, where is it? In the kiddush that you do on Friday night. What do we do? What are the reasons that we say in the kiddush for keeping Shabbat? One is Zecher L'Maaseh Bereshit, and the second is what? Shabbat is Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. But Shabbat was in creation. Yetziat Mitzrayim was not yet there yet. But Yetziat Mitzrayim was another proof for what? For creation. Because if God created the nature, He can also change it. So therefore, on Shabbat, we say both. That's A. B. Despite everything you learned in Cheder or in Gan or in a Jewish day school, Shabbat is set, the date itself. I think it's for the Matas, it's for Yom HaAtzmaut. They are practicing. For Yom HaAtzmaut, I think. Yom HaZikaron? They will do Matas on Yom HaZikaron?
I think they do the show.
Whatever it is. So the thing is what? Is that on Shabbat there is also something very active that we need to do. You can perform Shabbat by not doing all the melachot. But if you didn't do anything on Shabbat itself,
You need positive mitzvot.
you need also some positive mitzvot, and part of it is what? ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת. What does it mean לעשות את השבת?
Make it to do it.
Continue.
To form,
Don't make up things. Just go one more word. לדורותם. The way you make Shabbat, that will be for לדורותם, to perpetuate it for the next generation. There is an active role on Shabbat. We forget it sometimes. We always look at Shabbat as what you can do. But there is a lot that you can do. Can. C-A-N, not cannot. So that's his idea. Now, just for the remaining minutes that we have, let's take a look at Lekach Tov. It's not such an ancient midrash. It's maybe 12th century. Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera אומר, page 3. We are still on page 3. רבי יהודה בן בתרא אומר, ממחרת השבת, ממחרת יום טוב, the day after יום טוב, שנאמר, 7 שבועות תספור לך, ספירה התלויה בבית דין. You see? I think Burgansky, I don't know if he took it from there or not, but this is definitely a good proof that what? It says what? 7 שבועות תספור לך. To you. What does it mean? 7 שבועות תספור לך. So really the simple interpretation is that unlike Yovel, that who needs to count? Only Beit Hadin, HaOmer, each one of us count. This is also, by the way, why each one of us count the Omer. And we are not Yotze by the Chazan. But he wants to say, Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, in this midrash, he says, תספור לך או לך ספירה שתלויה בבית דין. Meaning counting that what? That is being generated by the Beit Din. ויצאת שבת בראשית שספירתה בכל אדם. What does that mean? Everyone knows how to count the 7 days. But ספירת העומר, it's the Beit Din. The Beit Din will decide for you when to start. This is somewhat of a proof to what Burgansky tried to suggest. To tell you what? When it says ממחרת השבת, when it says תספור לך, it's come basically to teach you that what? That it's upon you like a Yom Tov to sanctify and to tell me when to start the counting. Unlike Shabbat, that we all know how to. If I will ask you on Tuesday, okay, how many days until Shabbat? It's not that complicated, right? You don't need a Beit Din for that. But if I will ask you, okay, when is Rosh Hashanah, and you don't have a calendar, what would you say? Ask the Beit Hadin. If I'll ask you when is Sukkot, ask the Beit Hadin, right? So therefore, in this midrash, you might have somewhat of a proof that what? That it's really about the idea that the rabbis wanted to show that they have the power and the authority to determine the times of the holidays, unlike Shabbat.
we
So,
bring the edus to the Beit Din, but the Beit Din is the one that declares it, but it's dependent upon the edut of the Din.
right, that's the power of the people, but the ones to decide at the end is the Beit Din. So, what did we see today? Because next week, Bezrat Hashem, we will continue. I will highly suggest, take it home. Don't leave it here. Somehow, they grow legs, and they disappear.
And bring it back.
Yeah.
You have to say it.
So take it home and bring it back. So what did we see today? Just to make sure that we are clear, we saw the ambiguity from the get-go about this Chag Shavuot. Is that a celebration of the Omer, of the Katzir, and then we have some kind of a combination? That was one. The second ambiguous thing was the date and the name, Mimachorat HaShabbat, that is obviously under debate between all the sects that were in the time of the Bet HaMikdash, Baitusim, Tzdukim, Karaim, Karaim came later on, and the Pushim. The Ramban's suggestion to try to understand it, he did it what we call al tzad shlila. He tried to basically show how everything else will lead you to a disaster. So therefore, you should pick what the rabbis told you. And then we saw Burgansky's suggestion, which is very interesting and very innovative. And we found something that might be some kind of a proof to his opinion. The cheesecake, Chag HaShavuot, Matan Torah, next week, Bezrat Hashem.